Welcome back, everyone. 皆さんお帰りなさい。今日は90、90、8日目です。is day 98. Got quite a lot of stuff. Yesterday. I think the vast majority of them, though, dealt with repeated the lack of like support for predicates, more or less. So those things I think we're gonna for this type of portion set it up to like rote memory, right? I think it's too spurious to really generalize and try to contribute to cases and special cases and non-special cases when it comes to thinking of a pattern for transitive and intransitive stuff, largely because the way they introduce vocabulary is not oftentimes edge cases are non-normal, not out of pattern, occur just as frequently as pattern ones, so you don't really get to reinforce it. You tend to just keep asking the same question: is this a normal one? Is this a not normal one? That goes the same with rendaku, shortened, and special cases. Oftentimes it can feel like special cases exceed the normal cases, so we'll go through the growing pains and they'll select themselves out, right? And then you default to the SRS to help you with that. So let's gather this. Starting with the first one, right? So it's not really for the sake of knowing the read, right? Tasukaru. It's more for the interpretation or translation. In this case, is to be helped. Actually, I take it back. This is to help. Is probably why I got it wrong. No? Yeah, see, I'm still doing it. There's no, like, differentiation. You just gotta know. I think this is to be helped. And Taskeru is to... Yeah, and Taskeru is transitive. What else we got? This one was a typo. On sha instead of shu, or I wrote shu so sha. This one was synonym block, so examination. There are going to be a few of them for overlapping in this cluster. This one again is transitive and intransitive stuff. Oh no, this one not so much. This is more of a synonym but colloquial English thing. So I'm going to use to exchange something from now on. Right? Yes. I wrote to return, but it's more like to return something in exchange for something. Not to return as in literally give it back. Soko. Nah, nothing on that. Sometimes human reflexes do be doing human reflexes thing. This is a human error. Again, this is transitive, intransitive thing again. Trying to see the pattern, right? So this is to decide something, I think, which is transitive. I actually wrote to decide something to make it so that it is transitive, as opposed to writing to decide, which is still transitive. The way commonly the way English does, they drop the direct object. And that's inconsistent. That is one of the things that lead to translation and wording being inconsistent. So you're constantly guessing if it's to be helped or is it to help. Because be is a intransitive, transitive separator, and then sometimes something, someone is a transitive, intransitive helper. And the thing about why I don't like how WaniKani is doing it is that they don't shake. A transitive, intransitive is a shake mechanic. So it's a double check mechanic. In order to double down and double reinforce the distinction between transitive, intransitive, since you're not providing anything for that, is to shake. In my opinion, it's one of the things. You shake it and you tell the user, slow down, sort it out, right? But instead, in my opinion, maybe several people or different people are doing each things. It's inconsistent. Sometimes some things to get to be, let something that there's, it's quite inconsistent. So it requires a shake. I think anything that doesn't particularly have something that supports and is haphazard deserves a shake. And I think you can definitely script something to shake for this. Another one is rendaku. Since rendaku is, just remember if it's rendaku or not rendaku, shake. Not an error, shake. You shake it so that whether someone chooses to stop or not, the idea is you're trying to encourage the stop. It's like, wait, hold. Perhaps you should consider rendaku, or perhaps you should not consider rendaku. That kind of thing. So anywhere where it kind of says, oh yeah, you just have to remember this, or oh, this is a special case, I would say shake. But no worries. We got in another 2 days. We'll solve it by having a blanket double check, right? That's what's accelerating the Hanzo Hero experience, which is double, and then instead of saying, oh, I got it wrong, I'll just correct it right away afterwards. I double down my time on those elements because I have the opportunity to do so. WaniKani, no, it's just not. It's the poor feeling, and at the moment of the mistake, I would say most of the time it's like it's a bad feeling. I still stop, but I would say if I was in a hurry or don't really naturally stop, then you move on and it just leaves a sour taste, right? Because those are the harder moments. Those are the moments where maybe you can come up with something clever or something rote memory dependent. And that was like the bulk of yesterday's sour feeling, right? Which means I have to double down. So I'm not to be decided. I'm pretty sure I have to be decided. I don't know what it is. Oh, it's ma. Alright, so this is ke for transitive. To exchange something, not so much. There isn't... Well, you could argue... exchange something is close to... I'm using exchange, but... which is transitive. In transitive, you can say to substitute, right? So we have to substitute. Which is... this is kaeru. Kaeru. Kakeru? I think the closest thing I can think of is kakeru. I have to look. Actually, let's look now. Oh, that's from yesterday. Yeah, to replace something. That's the one we're focusing on. Oh, it's kawaru. See, like, I would not be able to link those together because there's no reference to that. Other than, oh yeah, this is the same breed as this. That's about it. So it's kawaru. And these don't necessarily form... Oh, this is intransitive. See, I wouldn't have been able to know. I would have to just remember. And this one is a special case because it's both intransitive and transitive. Sometimes transitive. That would explain why I don't know of a pair for it. So the question is to substitute for and to place something. It's very difficult to also remember how that differs. Obviously, since we do not have context, or not that much context. They're kind of, in a way, to substitute for different things. Like very particular things. That's how I would look at it at the moment. This one, so this is wa. That's the closest thing we have. Wa. And I don't know about decision. It's probably ma. These are right. It's ma. So to be decided is intransitive. And this is transitive. So this is what you call the typical flow, where is the transitive and is the intransitive. So maru and meru combination. And I sort of rely on that to some extent if I don't know what the word is. But they're not introducing this as groups. They're introducing them whenever it fits conveniently in their curriculum. And then we have this, which is a rare ku, and this one is supposed to be intransitive. Yes. And this is scoot. Again, not a problem with read or understanding per se. If you write it in a sentence, you will probably know, you will likely be able to know from many things that it is intransitive. So what is this one? There are multiple attach. I'm not sure what. Probably tsukeru. Let's try tsukeru. Or it's probably a compound verb now that I think about it. No, it's tsukeru. Attach something. Yeah. So tsukeru is the transitive. And then that's why I write safeguards, because then tsukeru would be to attach. Or to attach something in order to provide a more consistent way to cue the transitive. This is a typo. Typo on the Riki. Now I have typos based on reads and not typos based on English and or Romaji. As in, sometimes I'm like, you know, baryoku, but it's bariki. It's not one of those things you swap it up from time to time. At least I experienced that. We got another, this is a typo for a. Oops. And the typo is because of off of hikari. Hikari. Oh, this is a typo, or the double check for he. Reading, double check. And this one is a synonym block. Rest days is a holiday. When you place this word in the context, a rest day is sufficient. That's all. We got a lot more. I don't want to go too late. Let's see. The last thing. This one was pretty bad. No, we have it. It's right here. We have response or reply. Reason this could be tough is in the same group there are 2 or 3 other ways to say response or reply. I think this is taito. No, kaito. This is tough because it's our first instance of to. For this read, the onyomi. For it defaults to ota. Add a few more. We have tenchi. That's fukin. Fukin is a little weird one. So what does this? Why is this one weird? The foo on here. Special case, neighborhood. Utsuru. Which usuru? This one. It's to be reflected. Keyword be, which makes it intransitive, right? So utsu, which is related to utsuru, or to be photographed. Jijitsu. Jijitsu. Jitsu. This is facts. Fact. But truths are facts, but I kind of like facts to distinguish between truth and matter or occurrence or thing. I think this is pretty good. We're good. All right, that gives us the whatever the 27 is at 5 p.m. which I reckon is it's gonna be in 2 minutes. So I reckon this is probably one of the master to enlighten steps. We're getting close. We're getting close. All right, we'll grab the other 27 once we're done with these. All right, let's get into it. Okay.
次
Oops. Transitive. And it's transitive of the tsukeru. That's and na ge. Right, so this is what they mean by the classic ones. So ge and ke tend to be transitive, tend to be, and they are both versions. It's a compound verb or compound predicate that signals both predicates. So nage as in nageru and tsukeru.
投げつける
Nagetsukeru. This is ka, so it's intransitive. Typically intransitive.
助かる
Asukaru. I'm gonna write. This is supposed to be important. I'm gonna write important matter just to test it. I think we're just gonna stick with important. I don't want to test things today. Jew. Service freebie. So this is which is typically intransitive. I mean transitive. And we're using to exchange something to distinguish as well.
Kaeru
Kaeru. Which kaeru is also lines up with other predicates, but those predicates are kind of related. Like to return something, to exchange it. Kaeru. Kaeru is to return in a different way. So it has that element. Strong heart. How do we go with strong heart? I want to say determined, right? Determined, committed. The question is, which way or how did they interpret it? Determination, commitment. This is where double check double check comes into play quite a lot, because I can experiment with how far the meaning can stretch. I can write this down. Pretty sure this is one. So heart plus strong in an adjective. I want to write determined. And then this is probably kokoro tsuyoi. Tsuyoi. Or kokoro dendaku tsuyoi. Yeah, not much to go off of other than just committing to committing to something. I don't think it's, I added determined, but committed, which also is hardening, right? Hardening and reassuring. Determined, committed, yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, reassuring. It's a consequence of being determined or committed. Heartening. Although heartening kind of lines up, kind of. Yeah, this one's gonna be pretty meh. And definitely kokoro tsuyoi. Okay. I'll go on the pile.
Igaku.
MAKU. Decision or determination. And shorten. Kette.
決定
Winner. Whoops. Wrong. This.
心強い
大事.
大事
Was this supposed to be a geoduck? Yes. Could have been retroactive. They could have made that retroactive as page. Or like waited till page is introduced. Page wasn't introduced yet. And that's interesting. Okay.
Shosha.
Oh, shot. The typo from yesterday. Public official. MAKU. Wait. What do public officials do? This is kind of weak, actually. Between yakunin and yakujin. Or it probably is Nintendo.
役人
Something about Nintendo. Oh, Yaks and Nintendo. That's right. That's right. Everybody, that's fine. Taking a test. I paused on accept yesterday. You can. You can taking a test. Wait. Yes. Oops. You can. Music retroactive. This is to be reflected. Official. Uru.
映る
An. Uke. Transitive. I mean intransitive. And oh wait. This is so what are we changing? So this is bakasu. Bakasu. No, this is bakasu, which you would think could possibly be intransitive, but no. I think this is transitive, right? And you're trying to change someone's mind. Bakasu. Yeah, this is transitive, which they have to bewitch to enchant, so I wrote transitive things to remind myself it's transitive. Although this one's just gonna be tough. I think bakasu is tough. And then it's related to bakeru, but it's not in ke ka relation, because one is bakeru and this is bakasu. Saying what is not is, in my opinion, also important to also knowing what is. But I feel like much like many designs these days, it only operates on affirmation as opposed to negation and due diligence. So like a footnote here I would add is this is not one of those things that relate ke and ka, right? As opposed to thinking, oh yeah, this is ke or this is ka, so it would be intransitive or likely to be intransitive. In this case it's not. And this is bakasu, right? I'm gonna write that down. That one sucks for me right now. So what do we have? Yeah, change. Plus bakasu. Probably. And that is to bewitch or enchant something. Okay. Finish.
Bakasu.
Bakasu. Uke.
向け
Oops. Omoi.
重い
Which they swapped up swapped up near rhymes for. That's one of the things. not the biggest fan of that. Important task, which was used as a block off for the other one, which is important matter, right? So that important task was blocked off for important matter for important task. I think this is important task. Which there's also Aaron that could overlap in a way. I'm thinking about it right now. Yeah. Right? Yeah. More valuable is daiji. And taiyaku. This is taiyaku. Special because tai, or not particular. Unless taiyaku. Yeah, it's an important. Right. Taiyaku.
大役
That one was okay. Yo.
発表
Yo. Announcement. Okay. We'll also be changing that part of my routine as well in 2 days, where I would tell myself the reading and the interpretation, the reading and the definition, and then do the reading and definition again later because they don't follow each other. Side B. Plan. Response. Coco. Ascertain the truth. So this can be actually multiple things, and I think I just have one that I want to add to this, and that's probably investigation. But we're using experiment for this one. That's the primary. This is probably because anything to do with examination, teaching, testing, investigation, research, I think I have more nuance in English that kind of compounds the interpretation for these ones. Probably going to add investigation, even though there's a more primary investigation as opposed to experiment, but an experiment is an investigation. How does this work? You can probably
実験
shortened. Getting already starting to get the feel of shortening sounds. Getting used to saying the reads and I'm like, nah, that doesn't sound right. It needs to be shortened. And getting used to like 5 or 6 different rendakus. 5 or 6. Which is probably most of them, honestly. Because what? We have 5, right? Wait. Haro. Ha. Ka. Ha. Haro. Haro. Saro. Haro. And then it's it's not really a rendaku, but more of a change to the p, right? Not a 10-10, but whatever the other thing is called. There are a few more. There are a few more. Like 2 or 3 more. Now you just gotta get used to the change. Where the changes are. Pull and slide. Oops.
Kakudo.
Kudo. Kaito.
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 Yote.
Yote. Omowazu.
Omowazu.
Unintentional. High level. And or altitude. Can't spell altitude.
Kodo.
Kodo. This one triggered my fall yesterday. Like I fell off an emotional cliff after this one when I typed weight instead of body weight. Ugh, that fell. I fell off the cliff after that. All downhill. Kaiju. Kaiju. Experiments. Investigation. Test. Those are fine. There's a chance I will write investigation more than I write test. But a test can come up. Okay. This was a typo. Hatsuon.
Hatsuon.
See to eye on one's service or duty is either a duty or a role. Right? Either a duty or a role. We haven't used it in the context of business. Unintentional. Unintentionally, right? Yakume.
Yakume.
Or two. Heya. This is special. It's gotta know heya. Don't see it. Turkey. Okay, so now we have a de. But a de, this would fall into the line where you would consider this transitive, right? Off the eru. So this is transitive. It's to sell, right? Specifically. Oh no. Actually, this is intransitive. This is intransitive because it's there. It doesn't do the ka, ke, or ge, ka, ga stuff. So, because how do I know this is intransitive? Because they ascribed something to neru. Neru sounds like rare, and things that are sold that are very popular or like sold really well is a rare sight to see, and that stuff is being sold. It's not to sell the stuff, but being sold. Be popular, and I think popular is what makes it easier to remember that this is intransitive. At least that's what's going on in my mind right now. Let's take our time. Yeah. Right. So to be sold, to be popular. And what are we selling? Uni. Right, ureru. And to sell something is off the... Actually, no. This is both. This is both, because when I try to think of what the heck is to sell, I still default back to this. So this is to sell and to be sold, and to sell well and to be popular, right? Oh, they consider it as intransitive. Yeah, there you go. That's why this is confusing. Because to sell may imply that it is transitive, but the thing that I'm trying to keep constant is instead of thinking of transitive as being to sell or to sell something, you just write to sell something for transitive, because to sell then it would be less likely to be confused with the intransitive. Yeah, so we're sticking with what I was saying about the intransitive thing, which doesn't line up with de, as in the little tidbit about eru versus aru things. Eru, aru, column things. So yeah, just take it one at a time. Take it one at a time. I think this one deserves to look if I have... I do, to sell something. Uru. And uru is the basis for ureru, the uni thing. Yeah, and uru is transitive. In this case, this doesn't have anything to go off of. So, we'll put this in. So, sell plus de do be sold. I prefer that to be sold. And ureru. Which then we'll think of uru. Okay. Yes. Anoshimu.
楽しむ
Anoshimu. The other thing that triggered me, like the 2 days ago, was writing true for this character, and then it's being marked wrong because they wanted truth and reality, right? But true was marked incorrect, and I just flipped out. I'm like, well, I mean, as flipped out as I can be. I was like, ah, dang it. Because when I think about this character being used with other vocabulary words, like in vocabulary words, you're going to encounter true for it. And it's wild that true and truth are not together for this character. So it was wild. And the only reason I typed true and facts and truth, real, really, and reality, and pure sometimes, and clear together is largely because in Hanza Hero, there's an accountability for all the things and then discovering nuances later, right? I think you might be one might be thinking, oh yeah, because later you're going to use these things to read sentences and paragraphs and whatnot, and you'll find the frequency. But you can kind of glean a little bit. You can mature this when your synonyms expand as well. I think one of the things that I like to do, not while I'm using WaniKani and Hanza Hero, is after a while you start listing off like vocabulary words and you realize, wait a minute, whenever I say investigate, why do I think of 4 different terms? And then the fun part, in my opinion, the fun part is now you know those 4 loosely based on like overlapping out of context or maybe some context sentence things. Now you can go out there and find use cases. Like, oh, okay, so that's one way to use that instead of this. It's like, oh, that person used this instead of this. And that to me is at some point one of the more fun, like the reward for learning all of these things, as opposed to like some sort of negative feeling over time when people say, well, I want to know exactly, I want to learn from the start exactly when this term is used and in what context. And I'm like, well, I suppose it might be true for Japanese if you want to believe it. I don't know enough Japanese to know. However, in English, that is not the case. That is absolutely 100% not the case. In fact, it will, whatever you know now will not be the case in 1 year from now, or possibly even 3 months from now. So the words I use in English that makes me quote unquote funny enough, I guess some people would say I sound like a Native American English speaker. No, American native, like American English native speaker, not Native American. See what I mean? American English native speaker. But my English, in my opinion, sounds statistically not like the English that I would argue 70 to 80% of Twitch streamers would use. So does that consider the concern of you need to, you know, all these synonyms and they're not interchangeable, or they're interchangeable, or they're not interchangeable? It's gonna change over time. And I actually think for Japanese, it's probably going to change more rapidly now that Japanese is kind of a trendy language. It's a trendy language. And how do I know, in my opinion, since I am not learning English? Spanish. I can't tell you how long we spend talking about, oh wait, but they say this and that over there, and they say this and that over there, and this actually means this, well, this means this, but it also means that. And they both, as a learner, you realize, okay, so it's all of the above, but which one are you going to choose? Even pronunciation, which really fun. I'm not sure if Japanese is going to get that quickly. Maybe within my lifetime, like the next 20 or 30 years. Generally, English, that's the fun part about English. But it's interesting how English learners, or like English speaking language learners, try to put themselves in a box. And then when they put themselves in a box, it becomes a very negative space. I actually think it's quite elegant that Japanese still has that rigidity where, oh, okay, this means that specifically, but then you're trying to translate it into a language that, like, well, what do you want to call it? Is this true power? Or is reality? Or like the real power? Like, is this true power or real power? Is this a figurative power or a literal power, right? And when someone says a literal power, they can mean figurative power in English now, which is still something that I have to juggle with. And when you say true power, they might only mean the literal power and not the figurative power. When I think of true power, I think of the figurative power, a person's words, a person's creativity. But without context, it could be all of the above. It could be any of like any of the things that I've talked about. And also, if you type real power as a response to this, it will be marked incorrect, because they decided to use true instead of real, right? So that's kind of, in my opinion, it's a growing pain to get like your good scores and your accuracy things. But to me, the more I have discussions about these things, the more I understand that my growth in the language is increasing, as in things become, in my opinion, murkier, more nuanced. So then when you learn something very rigidly, it becomes a little bit irksome over and over again, right? And WaniKani users have no shortage, and I join the group. I can empathize with the group whenever someone says, yeah, you know what would be really great? Retroactive scaling on synonyms, because it would be really fantastic if there was a third column, which I do now manually, where primary, alternatives, and Japanese synonyms. As in, what are likely cases of usage of meaning? There is somewhere. There is a column for, in the kanji section, there is a column where, this kanji looks like this other kanji, which is great. That's one aspect. And then there's also kanji that sounds like other kanji, which it doesn't exist in WaniKani yet, retroactively, right? And then there's vocabulary words that may not sound like them, typically don't, or sound like them, which can be helpful. And then they're related. And then there's also vocabulary words that, yeah, you can find them being used in overlapping cases. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about, which SRS, or like the way this is done, Hanzahiro is also true. There's no retroactive scaling. So you're not, when you learn a true power, right, true strength, later on, if there's another expression for like real power, it wouldn't retroactively add real power and associate it with true power. Then you'll be getting groups of synonyms and groups of antonyms, which, funny enough, that's kind of what Duolingo does instead. Duolingo doesn't define the stuff most of the time, or the nuances as well. Like, they don't do that type of thing, but they put it in a sentence, and what they do is they change out implicitly a word that substitutes for another word. Like, what was my most recent one? Marido for esposo, and it's very specifically esposo and marido. Although I haven't used, and for whatever reason, it's explicit because marida is not a thing, which you could infer would mean wife, but they didn't use it yet. but we did have esposo and esposa for wife and husband, right? But marido specifically stayed husband. And that's kind of the Duolingo approach, which you could add that onto an SRS, or you could do it manually, which is what I do. And I think that's the fun part. I actually think getting it wrong is the sucky part, because it functionally doesn't do a lot anymore retroactively, not as much, but shaking it and then telling yourself, hey, I can add a synonym here. Like eventually, I think in maybe like the next 100 days, at some point, I'm going to be typing Japanese synonyms, as in I'm going to add a Japanese entry to the synonyms. Like, for example, duty, 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 duty. Duty, 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 public office, official, public office, right? And you might be thinking, but don't they already do that, where you can like click on truth and like power and they just look down here? It's like, no, this is a list of all the vocabulary words. There are very specific vocabulary words that I would like as synonyms to remind myself that they're related in that regard. And it helps me cluster things, right? I would probably add antonyms as well. So while this only takes synonyms, in notes, I'm basically just gonna write notes over and say antonym relationships and or other special notes, right? So I will be writing antonyms in this portion moving forward, like at some point. I'm gonna say around day 150, we're probably gonna start thinking about, you know, I'm having problems with this. Let's go write an antonym note or a use case relevance, because engaging in the language in a different way, very helpful. Duolingo uses that, and it makes it really easy to remember. Almost, in my opinion, easy enough that people think it's boring. So like if you learn largo, right? You expect to learn short, which, funny enough, that's one of the examples that did not have, oh yeah, not short in terms of opposite of largo, right? But however, another example would be bajo, which is short in height, right? And then you have alto, right? For tall. So you can do these things too. Instead, right, a lot of times these types of SRS go for frequency and curriculum, as opposed to relating by theme or relating by meaning. So if you learn true power, would you learn fake power? Would you learn strong when you learn weak? If you're learning food, would you cover the 6 basic food groups before introducing more food? That kind of thing is, in my opinion, it makes things a different way to remember, which I think actually makes it easier sometimes for a lot of people, and that ease makes it feel repetitive. Like, oh, I already know all this after like one day. Like, that's great, but are you going to remember this 7 days from now and 14 days from now? And that's where Duolingo kind of not so great, because they do not have a dynamic SRS where it constantly feeds back. They have a curriculum that kind of brings some of that stuff back, but you know, pros and cons. Anyways, just a thought. I'm gonna go over most of this in 2 days. How I'm gonna change scripts, right? I'm gonna apply scripts to WaniKani, and then since I'm not doing those things anymore because the scripts take care of them, what else am I gonna do with the extra time, right? I'm gonna write antonyms and synonyms in Japanese if I can. If I can remind myself of something, I'm going to write them in, because some people say, and I hear this a lot on the WaniKani forums, like, why do I want to do that anyways? If I'm going to do that, I might as well download an Anki deck. It's because if you download the Anki deck, you're not actually doing it. That's one of the things. Like, of course, if you believe in the theory that you just need input all the time and you don't do output to inform your decision, then that's perfectly fine. You'll probably get to the same place if you have someone else provide all these relationships for you and then you bootstrap on them. Or you can output those things and make the connections yourself. Technically, that's input and practice of a different skill, but the skill is not relevant to the input of Japanese. You're forming associations, you're practicing associations. That is not deliberately involved in learning new material, new inputs. Like if you know, I don't know, see, I don't even know how to say false yet. Like what I mean is, I don't have an appropriate opposite to this yet. So knowing that I don't, I'm going to look forward to having the opposite of this soon or at some point, and then I'm going to link them together. That's a different skill than learning more Japanese. So I think when people hyper focus on specific things and aspects that they want, in my opinion, they tend to ignore practicing other things that could be involved in the process. And I totally get why, if you're trying to create a theory or a theorem in order to have control over the interpretation, and at the same time, it's ironic that in order to make the case for like language learning, one of the assets of language learning or learning a new language at a later time is actually to develop a lot of those skills again, or like to practice with an adult mind on practicing other skills like problem solving, making associations, creating sentences, reevaluating your native language understanding, because a lot of times native language learning stops at high school. I mean, you don't really need any more than once you graduate. So I would argue that the average English speaker, native English speaker, is probably around high school level. Don't really require to expand your vocabulary anymore. And I would even argue that's probably true for other native languages you use based on pragmatism. You're not sitting there saying, I should read a book and expand my vocabulary beyond what it's necessary for everyday life use. So learning a language at a later time is an open opportunity to reevaluate how much you understand about and in what nature you understand your native language. And that's a skill not involved in learning more about Japanese. So I totally still agree with someone who says if you want to acquire your target language faster, stop thinking your native language. I disagree that there's no merit to translating in your head and using your native language to learn a target language. The question is it relevant to your goals? The person that says it's a waste of time to use translation and interpretation to learn a target language because it'll slow your target language, that's correct. That is correct. If you find zero value in understanding how English, for example, interacts with Japanese. For me, since I live in a household that is bilingual, or actually, I'm the person who's bilingual, so to speak. Sort of, very loosely. My parents need a bridge. So I'm telling myself to learn Mandarin in isolation of my English is like telling me to not use the usefulness of learning another language in order to interpret for my parents. So I disagree with misinterpreting. So a common misinterpretation of goals and the ways to go about it is very overblown and super reductive. Translation and interpretation is incredibly useful in speaking and engaging in multiple languages. It is not useful for someone who wants to focus on one target language, speak that target language, and also cares very, very little about their own native language. That's fair, right? Like if you want to move to Japan and imagine yourself only speaking Japanese, yes, do not translate. It's waste of time. Do not do things that you're not going to do in your future life, in your established lifestyle that you hope to have. My lifestyle is not going to change. I need English. I'm using English. I'm also using Chinese and Spanish, and I use them together. So if you're moving to a country that is multilingual and you're expecting to use all those languages, then translation, interpretation is absolutely 100% not a waste of time. So when you go around peddling that, it is ironic that someone says they want to be a polyglot and want to be a multilingual person, and they go around preaching that you should systemically not participate in a skill that you will naturally have because you want to speak multiple languages at the same time. I think people who want to be proficient and monolingual but use a different language, that's perfectly fine. That's a hot take. It's a little divisive. I think I disagree with people who believe that their strength of multilingualism and polyglot is because they are able to isolate their language from all of their existing language. I think one of the intuitions that they're avoiding when they provide advice is that they are leveraging that, in my opinion, whether they know it or not. Like your intuitions with other languages bleed into the existing language through experience. And then providing advice on how to manage language in multiple languages in a household or in your daily life, pretending like only one language exists, is the most efficacious and sustainable way of creating healthy habits with another language. It's myopic. It's incredibly myopic. One has to assume first that they want to live in an environment that is exchanging one language for another language. If you move to Japan, only learning Japanese will probably work out because most people in Japan speak Japanese. And then when they speak English, they speak no more higher than the high school level. So you probably have at least high school level English, right? If I go to Japan and speak my possibly in 4 or 5 years high school level Japanese, they'll know that I'm a foreigner. But when they try to speak English, I expect high school or lower as well. That's the reality. So to me, it's relevant that when a Japanese person come up and they think I'm a foreigner, they speak English, I should be able to also speak English at a competent manner that meets their communication skills. So if you're a person who's learning a target language and you don't care about the aspects of your native language, imagine what it feels like when you talk to the other person and they're trying to speak English and you're like, well, that's kind of weird. What does that mean? Because you no longer know the relationship between English and Japanese as a traveler. But if you're gonna live in Japan, yeah, go for it, because you don't need to develop your English. Your English probably will get worse over time and rusty over time when you live in Japan. So that's perfectly fair. It's pragmatic. But if you're a traveler, translation and interpretation is absolutely paramount, in my opinion. And I consider myself more of a traveler than someone who wants to forgo my own heritage and like just embrace and assimilate into another culture, right? Just a 2 cents. Something I probably will talk about in another 2 days. different mindsets, different purpose, granularity, and I hope that those people who find that language learning is rewarding find the answers to that. Their answers, not someone telling you what to do and then expecting you'll be happy. In my opinion, if I moved to Japan, I would be unhappy that I don't get to use English and Japanese at the same time. That's probably, it's not the main reason why I don't see myself living in Japan. But when people talk about learning a language, they often talk about moving to that place and embracing it, and one of the first steps is that language, right? If I moved to Japan, I would be saddened that people around me don't speak English and Japanese together, because in the United States, I learned language largely due to the expectation of using them. But you might be saying, well, in the United States, you don't meet Japanese people or Chinese people. It's like, yeah, but while in the United States, I'm online and I read and listen to Japanese and Chinese on a regular basis. So my lifestyle hasn't changed. So if I move to Japan, it's going to be the same. I expect to go around, use the language that I have, but at home, I probably speak English, actually, not Japanese. And then go online and I probably listen to Chinese and English. My lifestyle has not changed even if I moved to Japan. Some people hope that learning a language would change their lifestyle to something they want. That's perfectly fine. Like, there are other things moving to Japan that one has to understand. From learning the language, you'll probably learn about the culture of Japan. I do not agree with the Japanese work culture. So that is something that I knew even before learning Japanese. And I believe there's a lot of psychological hot takes and maybe like granularity and things involved in actually living in Japan. So that's something I think takes even higher precedence than banking everything on learning a language in order to get closer to uprooting your life into things. And that's probably an older person perspective. I think a lot of younger people will discover something they really like. They're still looking for it, that special something. So I think 3 out of 4 times it's a younger person hoping to start a new chapter in their life. And that can involve learning a language and then moving to that place. Like, I know someone who wants to move to France, someone who wants to move to Korea, South Korea. There are 3 people who want to move to Japan, 2 people who want to move to Ireland. So yeah, it's from a place of dissonance, as in discontent or dissatisfaction. And I absolutely love learning language, not because I'm discontent, like I have discontent. I'm learning a language because I live in a country, right? This is a little bit ethnocentric. I live in a country that uses and are exposed on a regular basis to all 4 of these languages. So if I were to choose a country, like if someone asked me, do you ever wish to go to a specific country? I'd probably pick a country that speaks more than 1 language. And preferably, if it's even possible, to speak the 4 languages I already have exposure to now. Maybe Malaysia, Singapore. You might be thinking, oh, but you could pick like a Middle Eastern country and stuff, but I don't speak like any form of Arabic or Slavic or something like that, or like, right? So, but I would probably be more interested in a place that has more than 1 dominant language than a place that doesn't. And Japan's one of them. Japan is, for all intents and purposes, in my opinion, monolingual. It's even more monolingual than the United States. If you're talking about statistics, like people would say, oh yeah, but you know, Japanese people also speak English and they learn English. It's like, yeah, so does the United States. They have other languages. Not because it's taught in school, actually, a lot of times. There are less people who retain the school formal education. They actually just speak another language because of heritage. There's far more diversity in language than Japan. So that can factor into it. I still love Japan, by the way. Like, it's amazing place. It actually, that's the reason why Japanese culture is so identifiable. It's because it's monocultural. Like, monoculturally distinct. It does not get adulterated very often, not yet anyways, internally by foreigners, right? United States would be the counter, like one of the antithesis of the culture that is in Japan, and that makes it really beautiful. But then you have the, oh, it depends perspective. And what does it depend on? If you're from a multicultural country, the frequency of it depends as a terminating discussion, or it depends, or it varies, is coming from a country that is diverse, not from a country that is not diverse, but incredibly interesting. Japan is one of them. Word usage, their language also depicts that. It doesn't depend. This is when you use this phrase. In English, it depends on who you are talking to. Like, what does brother mean to you? I wonder. It's a very common word. You would think that brother would have some consistent usage, but I have brothers. What do you think that means? I consider myself very lucky to have who I would consider brothers. And I usually use the euphemism brothers from another mother. Well, in English it would be very difficult to identify what that is depending on the user. But in Japanese, I would say you can probably get like 90% of people to agree how one should use brother in their language. Yeah. Different sides of the coin. Anyways, I should really stay on top of things today. Tanoshimi.
楽しみ
Tanoshimi. I'm gonna hire a room. Of course, gotta link it back, wrap it up, right? When you start having dialogue with yourself about like non-context things and whatnot, I think that feels awful, sort of, at first, but it's definitely an indicator that you're maturing into the language. Like in Hanzahiro, I'm just throwing things around like, oh, okay, but it really feels like this, and it really feels like that. It really feels like this. That's when I start like, yeah. One should be, in my opinion, embracing the granularity that comes from maturing thought. Oh, there, Muhammad. Hello, hello. All right. Ureru.
売れる
Tanoshimu. This is transitive, right? Oh no, actually, it's. Oh yeah, this is true. How does how does mu work? No, wait, we got very few moves. Just remember that it's transitive. I write to enjoy something in order to indicate that it's transitive for now. To keep consistent. True power. This doesn't seem right. Maybe like G. It might be. Was this the one that I was surprised there was no rendaku or shortening? It's probably this one. Pretty sure. Yeah. Jitsuryoku. Whoops. Typo. Jitsuryoku. Jitsuryoku.
実力
Jitsuryoku. Most. Nai? No? This is to be bent. Yeah, to be bent. So this follows the ga and ge. So we have mageru, to bend something, and then magaru, to be bent. Right. And then exit departure. Wait. Oh no, this is different. Right? I think the last couple times I'm like, wait, isn't that just departure? But no, this one's still departure. Right? And then I got it wrong before because I forgot the shortening. Shu. Oh, and the rendaku. Shupatsu. Shupatsu.
出発
Yeah. Yep. Except to take something. We're just gonna do to take something to ingrain with this the granularity.
曲がる
Mangaru. Daidokoro. Forget the rendaku.
台所
Daidokoro. Herp. Jen. What was the accept? What are we accepting? Oh, ukeru. So, ukeru is the prototypic. So you're receiving something, you're accepting something, right? And then we had the you're receiving something that was coming off of the uni, right? The uni. What are you receiving in education? And then we just got the other. These are compounds so far. And then toru is transitive. Uketoru.
受け取る
Oh,
雲
umo. Oh. I wonder if this can be used as a fact. That's a contraction. This to be useful. Okay, so tatsu to be useful. This would be difficult. Yeah, they didn't write the word type on here since it's a compound predicates. are kind of difficult to categorize because tatsu is transitive and it's just standing in, yeah, because it's not a compound. This is not a compound predicate. It's a nature of the predicate. It is a verb phrase, though, or I would probably closely resemble a verb phrase. Okay. This is fact?
事実
Jijitsu. I feel like I wrote this yesterday. Why did I write it yesterday? Oh, because of Jijitsu, if it had any change, because it kind of sounds weird. Having Ji and next to Ji. One of the few rare ones so far. This is Yaku still. Yaku ni tatsu.
役に立つ
Yes,
今朝
special. Very special. Alright. So is this fact? It's things that are true, right? I wonder what happens when you flip them. That would be a fun little gymnastics later. Is this fact? Wait, did I already flip these? I don't think I've already flipped these, right? This is a fact. But curious what is jitsuji, if that exists. Interesting. Guess we'll find out in the future. Dai
次第
role or duty. Roll for it. And it stays Yaku.
役
Does this say Jitsu? I feel like it does.
実
Yep. Special, special, special. Iru. You. Ne?
20
番号札
番号札
番号札 So this is the ma one. So intransitive, right? So to be decided. Hopefully. Maru.
決まる
We have laboratory. And then, you know, the synonym would be research facility, which I could place now, but we'll do it later. To get further into our WaniKani stuff.
重要
重要, right? 重要. Something is slightly different about you, I feel. There is something different about you. Oh, kubi. Kubi is not kubi. Right. This is where we get the... This is radical. Neck. Shoot. Right. So, bu, shoot.
ブッシュ
Bushu. Oh, it's top for down, going down. Bushu. To bump into, to encounter by chance, to meet by chance. Yeah.
出会う
And then we got bopped by this examination. Right. Shiken.
試験
Shiken. These ones are fine. 研究室.
研究室
研究室. All right, and then we're doing the 27. What time is it? 6:14? Okay. Yeah? Oh. If, right? This is if, because we're taking temporary, and in temporary you're assuming or presuming, or if something is, but it's also provided. You know, I added all those, I'm pretty sure. Like provided or if something is true, right? Supposing, which what would that be? I think, oh yeah, kari. Kari ni.
仮に
So raku. Oh, rakusho. Rakusho sounds right.
楽勝
Rakusho. And this is not what it seems. Or is it? You could say it's bitter. There's also yeah, this is bitter because there's also she. It's painful. Bitter, like bitter tasting or bitter. Street angle, exactly. ちょうど
ちょうど
Moon, umbrella. Nigai. Nigards.
苦い
Eiga.
映画
Scary. Bubun. Bubun.
部分
Bubun. Parts. Application or use. Anima. How would I say if? Plant? No. People? No. Group? People. And I want to say mean. Angel. Bundle. Shio.
Shio
That? Oh. 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 Thai? One point. Pick up. Kaisu.
返す
Gasho.
一箇所
Oh. Obi. Enshi.
天使
Discovery. And okay, where does this fit in things? This is to exchange something, right? So to exchange something is transitive. So got nothing on this other than you just gotta know it for now. Got no grouping to help with it. Right. We have return? I don't think we. Or this is to return something as well. Or oh, that's a good point. I think we I don't have any, right? I think this is just straight up to return something. To exchange is something else. Oh, to exchange deals with eggs, which is a different, yeah, it's a different one. Exchange is dealing with change. So this is to return something. And road. Investigate. Very totemo. Bariki.
馬力
I was in there yesterday. Bariki. It says Ken.
発見
And that's the first time Ken came up for me. Yo. All. This is both. So we're going with the inform casual. Yamamichi.
山道
That's a misspelling of light. This is why you need double checks and stuff. You know what? We're just gonna do this and then Soon. Soon. Akari.
明かり
Okay.
バリ
Okay. Are these from yesterday? Yes, those are from yesterday. We still haven't timed out on our thing. So today was fine, largely because the few of the, I guess, the masters to enlighten ones were troublesome. It was like maybe 20-ish of them, so they were the fine ones. And then the rest, like 60 or so, was from our current unit. So now we have 2 days left, so which leaves tomorrow a great opportunity, right? Because tomorrow is not level up day, right? I don't think tomorrow is level up day. Or not level up day, second peak day. Which I can do my Spanish retrospection. Section 1 and 2 Spanish retrospection. Lots of things to talk about in that one. And then right after that, we're doing the WaniKani 100-day retrospection. Tentative takes, right? Tentative takes. And then in another 6 days after that, we're doing the Hanza Hero tentative takes. And that actually summarizes, that means 3 of the many major projects are going to be complete for April. So I'm preparing for them. Gotta make sure I'm not too exhausted for them. Lots and lots of things to talk about. I kind of talked about many of those existing topics in the last 3 or 4 days. I was trying them out because people asked questions that allow me to talk about them, which was great. Great practice. Less prep work. Do it live. Okay. Tombstone, kiss, beams, beans, not beams, beans, alcohol, landslide, geoduck, music, dynamite, sick, stairs, bundle, turkey, alt, cell, Chinese. Let's do our reads. Okay. Cool. Shi. O. In. Shu. Shu. En. A. Un. Kai. No. Yo. Yo. A. San. Un. Mon. Go. Na. Sen. Yoko. Cho. Shin. Sai. Q. Okay, and then we have 3 here that really hit the spot for today, and it's turn of phrase. Nope. Son of a beast thing. Oh yeah, me. Does strong look like? So here's one thing that I've been doing off screen, but I mentioned that I'm doing for a while now. Is whenever I pause egregiously long, like I'm having to fish for it. I have a notepad written on the side where I write in Nomaji and English and my shorthand. So so let me show you, which it's kind of shown retroactively. So I have written here art. So I write down what I know, right? When I pause on something really long. So I write heart plus strong plus E, right? And then I wrote equals determined question mark committed question mark, right? And then equals kokoro zuyoi, like this, literally like this, right? But then after that, and then I write equals reassuring and heartening. This is what's on my notepad that I'm writing when I say I'm gonna add this. Now, why do I write it this way? It's because I'm gonna write it this way, and then when I go to at the end of the portion, which is right now, this moment, then I go to write, well, what is this? So heart, and then I can know if I'm not remembering, like if I'm using haziness, or am I really on top of my kanji when it comes to writing, right? Because I know what tsuyoi looks like when I see it, but I don't know it if I'm telling myself heart and strong yet, or not as strong. So it is another step, and I do this intentionally because I do care about English and I do care about interpretation. So I don't want to put people off, but I do it forwards, backwards, in every possible way and anywhere in between. So if I know determined and committed, I would be able to get to heart strong plus E, or kokoro zuoi in both romaji and kanji and etc. So I do these things in order to challenge myself in the way that if I keep doing the same thing by the same way, yes, you're going to get really natural at doing it the natural way. Perfectly all right. What is unnatural to a native speaker speaking more than one language? So that's kind of the cognitive dissonance I want to dispel. When I become very efficient at doing something, I add more tasks to it. So this is what I'm doing now on the side. I thought about putting like a notepad extra thing on the left column of the video feed. Maybe that'll be something added in the future. But right now, this is how I'm taking my notes. And I have 3 terms here, but it is written differently. So let me show you how it's different. So right now I'm trying to find strong. Strong is bow and insect with an elbow, right? Oops. Or not an elbow. What is that? Private? You have bow / private that's really strong, that's made of insects, right? And then this is plus E, right? And that's how you get kokoro tsuyoi. Now, what I actually do on screen is I actually say the words to myself as opposed to saying this. So I'm like, okay, let's look at the words. I'm going to be talking about this in the 100-day review, like things that I do now that I didn't do at the beginning, right? So now it would look more like this. So this is literal. And then now we're doing stream. What does it look like? I basically say, okay, so I have heart. Heart plus strong. And I'm doing that because I'm also syncing the radicals to my writing hand. So when I say strong, I'm actually thinking bow, private, and insect. So I write those characters into the kanji. That's an extra step because I sort of already know what strong and heart looks like. So I can write them by saying, oh, that's what strong looks like. But I also want to remember the radicals. So because I can, not because it's efficient. So sometimes I'm like, I don't remember strong. What am I forgetting? I know there's a bow. I know there's an insect. But was there a private on top of the insect? That's why I write things as well. And then, so all you're going to see, most people are going to see, I'm going to say heart, strong, plus E. Okay. And then I'm going to say, oh, that's kokoro zuyoi, right? So I would then go, which is what I'm starting to do now instead. By writing it as furigana on top of my kanji. So that's what I do now for writing when I'm doing my... And then I would draw an arrow, which is my shorthand for equal. And I skip over all my guesses. Like, I was like, okay, so now, like, I tell myself, okay, I was thinking determined, committed. And what is determined, committed? When someone is determined and committed, you are reassuring and heartening. And that's what I'm doing for the last couple, like 2 weeks. What you only see written is this. This is what you would see. But I'm really doing this in my head. And I'm doing this part is coming from the lesson pause or the review pause. It's actually just the review pause. I don't do this during lessons. Lessons are learning situations. Review pause. So this is the practice. I'm literally writing this. Whenever I'm pausing, I'm like staring off to space a little bit. I'm like, okay, we're just gonna add this. So I'm just like typing this stuff out. I type out the things I know in a different way, intentionally, so that when I go to remind myself, I'm also having the incentive of writing things and representing them in different ways. And I do this from now on for WaniKani. For Hanzahiro, it's not the same because Hanzahiro goes about it differently, and you know that's for later at the end. Someone recently made a video comment and asked me if Hanzahiro is good and is it worth the pro subscription, and I can't answer that question. Like, there's no way I would be able to answer that question. I don't know the person. I don't know what their budget's like. I don't even know what their previous experience. So what I did, the best of my ability, is to explain what I know about Hanzahiro, and if that interests them, and then tell them that, you know, it's free to try for the first 100 characters. That takes about a month. So you probably can figure out if you want to buy the pro or not. There's no difference between the free or the pro in the first 100 characters. But if they really were interested, which they asked the question without actually looking at the video, I'm pretty confident they didn't look at the video. I already demonstrated and used the Hanzahiro, so they could see what Hanzahiro is like and if they like it. I feel like oftentimes that's kind of far more reliable when someone is able to answer their own question by observing, but I tried my best to describe it while at the same time telling them where I would use it. And it's usually at the end of a stream. Mistakes and review of pinpoint mistakes and review is at the beginning, but at the end I'm actually doing my own thing. So this is how I do my own thing on plugging up. These are all my shorthands. So I do shorthands all the time, and now I do shorthand in Romaji, because Romaji, the last final output, is in kanji and Japanese, but my shorthand stuff is in Romaji in order to remind me and incentivize me to do my writing. The reason why is if I were to type these things in kanji, then I am not compelling myself to write the kanji and actually see the kanji. You're actually relying on your computer to tell you what the characters are. So when you're thinking to yourself, oh, you're reading something and you only see the kanji and you're like, wow, this is taking me a really long time. In my opinion, it's largely because you don't see things in kanji. You have things show you it in kanji. I mean, you'll still get to the same place. I mean, if you practice enough, you can still go in one direction. I typically rarely ever go in one direction. If someone says, oh, I'm not learning Japanese, I'm learning French, then I will use English to describe the Japanese in order for a person who knows English who's learning French to be able to connect with it. And in a way, that could get them interested in Japanese, because if I'm framing most things in English and I still am very comfortable in acquiring slowly or however much the Japanese, if it's understandable, it promotes approachability for language learning. Whether that's efficient or not, that's perfectly understandable. But generally speaking, the people who stay and they like, oh, this is interesting because you can explain things in English, Japanese and Chinese and English, I would say those people tend to be viewing themselves as speaking more than one language for the rest of their life, not living predominantly in a singular language. At least I like to think. But perhaps that may not be true. There are things like that, because if you move to a country that has a Romance language, English is far more elevated, in my opinion, than moving to like Japan and expecting that English to be intuitively more elevated, right? Much like studying Japanese as an English speaker, the distance is maintained in that country. But for myself, people constantly say like, wow, you're learning Japanese, but you still spend like 90% of your time speaking English. It's like, well, yes, on stream, I speak in English because it's the bridging language. Not everyone is only interested in Japanese. And how do you get people interested in Japanese? That's, in my opinion, not going around flaunting Japanese like you're an expert and then trying to impress someone that way. I think, in my opinion, I know that's how other people try to encourage people. Be really, really good at the thing you are, and you inspire them to be wanting to be good as well. That's not my approach. I actually think, because I like learning a lot, I want to normalize learning. So I do not go around prioritizing trying to be impressive in order to inspire people. I want things to be approachable, in which they think and decide this is interesting because you make it seem understandable, right? Here's a great example of Japanese Japanese language learners who lack emotional intelligence, in my opinion, to understand my point of view, but sure enough, behave very classically or generally these days when someone says, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's no English equivalent of this. Oh wait, Japanese, you just have to know Japanese because you can't translate this. Oh, you can't say any of this in English. English doesn't have this." The moment you say that, in my opinion, the more English speakers who don't care about the language you're trying to share that's interesting. Because all you're saying is, "Oh, I can't explain this to you. Oh, I'm not going to try to explain this to you. Oh, you just have to know. Oh yeah, just have to trust me." That's kind of how I feel a lot of times, which I'll go into later, about how to encourage people to do language learning. Like, I totally get it's very impressive. You can impress people with your skills. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, those people have all the right to celebrate how good they are. Because they're good, they love doing what they love. They're not actually there to be instructors per se. They're being served as examples of expertise. It's very different when someone goes around using their expertise as a way to be relatable to their audience. The more extraordinary you are, the more skilled you are an aspiration, not a relatability thing. Until those people achieve that, or even could achieve that, or know how to achieve that from looking at you, you are, in my opinion, it's negligent to suggest that you understand how to relate to those people. In fact, extraordinary people are unrelatable in general because they're extraordinary. It's oxymoronic to think that someone who's at the pinnacle of their performance is somehow relatable to someone who is thinking about starting something. So when you go around and saying, "I want to be like Usain Bolt," as opposed to this guy who instead of going to a guy who spends most of their time trying to teach beginners how to start sprinting, that creates cognitive dissonance. And I think it's very prevalent in language learning. Lots of skills that are lifelong skills, like fitness, tend to have a gigantic gap between identifying someone who has committed their life to instruction and teaching, and like balancing instruction and teaching and own proficiency, versus someone who you aspire to be without instruction. So when I think about language learning, I take it upon myself to identify people who are actively focused on learning and demonstrating how to learn the language. Not someone who comes around and say, "Oh, trust me, I'm a polyglot. I've already done all of these things, and this is what I come up with." I'm like, well, okay. Did you develop this while you were learning and taking consideration of those things along the way? Or are you doing this in retrospect after many, many years of experience? Because those two things, while they both can be reliable and be very, very successful, the latter example can more likely be a guy who is looking backwards in retrospection. There are people who do great retrospections because they take notes along the way. They originally decided to learn a language with learning in mind, not with a goal in mind. In my opinion, those who focus on goals and they got their goals and then sell their products are likely to be less consistent than those people who are focusing on how they got to their goal eventually and revealing those steps to people. So I like to think humbly that I'm more the people who are taking the notes to getting to whatever the goal is at the end. I actually don't even look at the goal. This is part of my life already, so it's not like I'm gonna say, oh, I didn't reach my goal, now I'm just going to stop doing it. It's already part of my life. So whatever the goal is, it's somewhere down there. It can be a lot of things. But this type of thing that I'm recording and doing is to demonstrate that it is far, far more complex. And you can make it as complex as you want. Jump through hoops, do backflips, and most people gloss over it and say, oh, I don't care because I don't need that to reach my goal. It's like, good for you, right? Awesome. You know what you want and what you need to do. Do I have to do this? Maybe, maybe not. Do you have to do this? Maybe, maybe not. The idea is I'm offering more attention and ways to go about it. I'm not saying you have to do this to be successful. This is how, in my opinion, I would go about most things when it comes to developing and iterating on what's known. There are such things as romaji. There are such things as guessing, right? And then there are such things as interpretation. And then these things are more based on transliteration. And this thing is more interpretation. So we kind of get a combination of this. And then there's a romaji, right? And then there's kanji. There's kana. And then the final product, which is the kanji with the furigana, and then the interpretation. And then you don't see the refined parts of all the other ones. And to me, this is what someone else linked earlier. This is a workflow. When you think of a workflow, you can think of it as like a computational code, right? I'm going through a workflow, and when my workflow gets efficient, I try to break it down and resolve more of the workflow, so I'm doing more work. Is that worth it? Well, for me, it helps me with a logical process of problem solving, because when I have problems remembering something, one of the ways to help yourself, use yourself to figure out what you need and what is sufficient to learn something is to be able to break it down. Or you can be an intuitive person and go to the next trendy thing and just swing it. Like, oh, this guy must have the solution to my problem, and go for it. That's not workflow computation. That's more like vibe coding, which is a buzzword right now. So you vibed your solution. That's fair enough. That could work too. I just wanted to, this is to demonstrate what goes on in my head. But now we're gonna go back to this stream aspect. It's a thing I'll be talking about in another 2 days. Hopefully. I have so many points, I don't want to balloon it, but I'll have 2 to 3 hours of talking points about WaniKani, right? And how to provide context translationally, not context natively. I think those words are so nebulous and general now that it makes me feel like they've lost their meaning. Like native as in how native people go about doing things. You're not native if you're learning a second language later in life. So I prefer that you take steps towards being native-like by being non-native and taking steps towards it, as opposed to jumping right in the deep end. I'm not a top-down approach kind of guy. I'm more of a bottom-up approach. So for me, you take what you have and you translationally provide context. This is context. These methods and learning and shorthand things are context for another language. Now, if your universe only includes the target language, then yes, this would be contextless or not context worthy. material, and that you can go and join the group of purists who only believes in immersion and comprehensible input or what have you, like the ones that exclude all the different tools you can use as a thinking person. So this is an illustration of juggling many different techniques so that I can introduce them. And at some point you're like thinking, well, if the technique doesn't work, what do? You forget it. You tried it. However, the experience you have, you can stick it in your back pocket, and one day, you never know, you might have a different type of skill that may work with this type of thinking. Now, yes, it sucks to feel like you wasted your time if the investment never realizes its return. But generally speaking, I'm a person who builds skills for the future, as opposed to expecting value in everything I do. I do them because I can. That is critical thinking and creative problem solving. You are building things as opposed to out of curiosity. You're not building them for a problem that already exists per se, but you can try, but you shelve them, right? You never know what the future holds. I think pragmatic thinking is great when you have so many problems and you don't have enough time to solve those problems. When you get ahead in life, at least in my opinion, when you get ahead in life, like for example, you know English, well, you don't really need to know another language if your country is English speaking. So inherently, when you decide to choose to learn Japanese, for example, as an English speaker in an English speaking country, you're solving a different problem. Oftentimes, people learn another language so that they can move to another country because their problem is actually the country they live in. That's solving a problem. That's a pragmatic thing. The problem consumes so much of your life that you are not creating and or using preventive, proactive enrichment. I typically, in my opinion, a little bit, encourage people to at least try to liberate 5 minutes or 10 minutes to the creative process, because the creative process is a skill that will come in handy, not all the time, but it will certainly be an asset when you reach a moment where you no longer have obligatory problems consuming most of your life. Some people prefer to keep their life full of obligatory problems. For myself, I try to keep, like, actually for now, 50% or so of my time is non-obligatory problems. So I spend most of my time enriching myself on what's a different way to learn Japanese. What's a different way an English speaker / Chinese heritage speaker, Fujianese heritage speaker, plus someone who lives in the United States can approach this problem of problem solving. So I'm in no hurry. I'm not here to tackle the most trendy things and whatnot. I'm here for exploration. This is intellectual exploration. When you say you need to learn Japanese the fastest you can possibly be, that's suggesting that you have somewhere to be and you have some goals to meet. And I have no qualms with you going around preaching the fastest way to learn Japanese. But know that you still have to ask the person, especially me, if that's even relevant. This stuff is not possible if I did not start learning Japanese. The stuff that I'm talking about right now would not happen if I didn't try to learn Japanese. And this stuff is not possible if I were to go around and say, what's the most trendy method to learn Japanese? It's certainly not this. But do you have people going around saying, oh, this is what you do with every word you're stuck with? At least I don't think so. I find it very hard to believe, because this would be very counterintuitive to other people. it's only, and in my opinion, it's only counterintuitive is because they practice what they preach, but they don't practice anything else. They don't consider anything else. To end like kind of this little digression, one of the most identifiable characteristics of individuals who are creators and leaders oftentimes is elements of creative process. I mean, you would think that when you think about a creator or a pioneer, that would imply that those individuals would have a creative process. But if you're going around stating what other people do and base everything on what other people do and only do what other people do because there's an assurance that it would work because other people have done it, then that is literally not the creative process, right? If you're doing that, I'm not saying do it with everything. Don't reinvent the wheel when you have to meet a deadline, for example. But reinventing the wheel deals with the creative process a lot of time. It evokes the creative process. What is reinventing the wheel? Learning a language to supplant your existing language. That is reinventing the wheel, right? And it elicits the creative process, hopefully. But it's humorous because lots of language learners, in my opinion, self-study language learners nowadays, try to not reinvent the wheel while learning another language. When inherently, pretty much everything you're going to do is, it feels like you have to reinvent the wheel. You have to reinvent how you look at the alphabets. You have to reinvent the way your mouth shapes sounds, and you're doing that. It's part of the creative process. So that's one of the elements of creators and leaders. They have spare time. I'm going to say spare time, or they make time. They make time for activities that involves the creative process. Like, hey, I see that a lot of people answer the question of how to learn Japanese this way, like 4 different variances of this way. Well, you know what? I can do that. And then let's go do something slightly different. What if they considered doing this? So this part didn't work, right? Nomaji, for example, Nomaji didn't work because of these specific reasons. And then other people say it kind of works because of these specific reasons. So how do I take the things that kind of work, mitigate the things that don't kind of work, and then take that and then combine it with something else that kind of worked this way, but doesn't overlap with this way? This is what that looks like to me. I'm taking the thing that I think Odomaji serves, the shorthands, transliteration things that I think works, and then using them in a workflow that is something that I would say I have not seen yet. And not that it's great or probably the best method or something. It's a creative process. I'm creating something that if I were to bet money, I would not be able to find 95 to 96% of people doing it exactly like this. What I just described. And if you do manage to find those 4 and 5%, be doing it with an SRS system that's prescriptional, like WaniKani. So you can stay for that if you want, but generally speaking, these are the things I build. I like building things. So very rarely do people find this stuff interesting because they prefer to be told by whatever is popular the easy way to do it. I'm not saying this is easy. Don't even think about this as easy. In fact, I would even argue that it would take time. It would take time to build this. Hanzahiro is very similar. Kevin has a workflow, and that's pretty sweet. It takes years, if not an entire mental gymnastics, to establish a workflow from your experience and then commit to that workflow. Like if you're picking up someone's workflow, right? It will take a while before you can internalize that, much like rethinking and reconstructing how you think about things. That involves something that will be transformative, in my opinion. So when you take someone's workflow and you're like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna skip over this, I'm gonna add this, it's gonna become your workflow. And to me, the people who are selling products are the ones that engage, are typically the ones that are engaged in this workflow. They are able to identifiably point out the things that are different and the same, why they're different, why they're the same. And when you put them all together, it's a unique product because it represents what they do. And then other people can use that as a starting place to develop their own workflow. If you're suggesting that when I ask you, how do you study Japanese? And you tell me, oh, you just do what this person says, then I'm not talking to a person who's creative, who engages in the creative process. If you're telling me, oh, I use what this person demonstrates, but hear me out, I change these things and change that thing because I realize that this part doesn't work and this part doesn't work, so I combine it with this guy's method and that guy's method in order to compensate for that. That is the creative process. You're creatively solving a problem. So when someone comes up and say, hey, just to let you know, you should use Anki, you're welcome. I would, for all intents and purposes, with all due respect, I will probably ignore and or take consideration that goes in the bag of maybe I should look at Anki, but you legitimately explain nothing about how that's relevant to you and how you're qualified to even give that advice to someone, right? And I would say whatever I just illustrated is being generous, because people say even less than that, thinking that they are competent or am pursuing or expressing that they are competent in something. Competence looks, in my opinion, I'm a little biased, but competence look like this, where you can explain on demand what you're doing in a hopefully coherent way. I'm not always coherent. That's why I practice these things. This looks sloppy still. I can see a bunch of ways to improve this so that I can better communicate and give people an example of what I'm doing. And when I speak out loud, I'm reforming the way I'm speaking out loud in order to illustrate things that go on in my head and balancing it between this. So like this more streamlined, right? Streamlined depiction is the negotiation that I'm having. So there are leaps of logic here, which I want to highlight temporarily for today. And of course, we have our daily bot that is using all the funny characters to circumvent the Twitch filter. Thank you, daily bot, for reminding me I'm also live on Twitch. Something to think about. I get a little yappier when I get closer to a review video because I'm trying to consolidate and spend most of the time practicing live the things I'm gonna have to say or want to say for posterity, when it often looks like people don't even look at the video. They don't know where to look at the video, even though it's at the beginning, at the end, strategically placed. They ask questions without thinking, in my opinion, or observing, and I still provide those answers. But boy howdy, I think you're selling yourself short when like people are so normalized at selling themselves short by asking the question, but not functionally even asking questions, realizing that the answers can also be different if you observe it. I ask questions, but I also observe at the same time, right? Questions are great when you incorporate observations in them. And what's even farther disheartening is people would ask questions and they wouldn't even be interested in the answers. And then when the answers is not like yes or no, do it, don't do it, then they are even less likely to be interested in why and how the answers are the way they are. Again, lack of a creative process or any form of critical thinking and problem solving. All right, and then we got 2 more words left. So I'm gonna do them. I'm gonna resume the typical pattern that I'm using. So we have change. Okay, so we have change plus kasu. So kasu. Bakasu, right? Bakasu. And this is so we have bakasu to change. That would mean then this one is special, that's why I marked it. It's to change someone's mind, to bewitch and to enchant someone, technically someone. Okay, and then one more was sell. Is that dirt? Yeah, sell plus de. And then do. And this is u. Udedu. And this one is different because it's to be sold. It's intransitive. But with a de. And that's it. That's it for today for WaniKani. So we're vastly approaching our day 100. And unfortunately, it's probably going to be the day 101 stream. Because if today is day 98, right? Yeah, the second peak day is going to line up with day 100. So it's probably going to be the day 101 video. It's going to be very difficult for me to stack a peak day. Well, you know, the second peak day, it is lesson prone. So I'll think about it. The following review day is kind of tough too. So maybe it's either going to be on the day of, so day 100 or 102, depending on how ambitious I am for the day. And I still gotta squeeze in Wagotabi's final thing. Like there's still a little bit more for Wagotabi. But tomorrow is a not peak day, and we're doing our Duolingo Spanish stuff. So the things that I've collected and observed and changed about Duolingo Spanish. All right, so gonna play it by ear. It's either gonna be day 100 or 102 is the day I'm going to review many of the stuff that I talked about during Hansa Hero, WaniKani, and Duolingo the last 3 or 4 days. It's a collective. I think across the 3 of them, I would have touched upon many of the workflows or things. I am not publishing any of these things. Maybe one day, if there was some sort of really recurring interest. I can write like a thought web or a workflow web that maybe could be a fun way to get people to think about their workflow and their work process. And that would just be it. I don't like prescriptional things, especially with intellectual exploration. But I could see myself trying to experiment with how to create a workflow that inherently encourages people to be creative. So maybe like a weird emotional intelligent workflow, as opposed to a computational workflow that deals with leveraging one's own pragmatic uses. Like, for example, hey, step 2, right? Step 2, consider these things. Can you write these things and then ask yourself if any of these things are important? If so, suggest trying this step and then reviewing it and evaluating it. Create a Likert scale for yourself. 5 being I like this, I should keep this, and 1 being not. So maybe some really more entertaining and emotionally intelligent way of going about developing your own workflow, right? I think learning a computer language and then tackling that is also really wonderful. It's still a language learning, right? I think workflow management and thinking, process-oriented thinking, is I'm biased towards this. If you're working on a life skill, process-oriented thinking, like workflow development and creative process development, is biasly far more relevant than goal-oriented thinking. If you're doing like a short-term project, like in the short term, and deadlines and pragmatism and fixed output and fixed rewards, it would be thrown way over to the goal-oriented things. But language learning is not one of them. Language learning is a heavily more, in my opinion, biased towards process-oriented thinking. And I chose these things intentionally because a weird flex, I'm very excellent at process-oriented thinking. Actually, most of my life involves careers and disciplines that take far more advantage of process-oriented thinking than goal-oriented. Like an 80-20 split, right? 20% goals, 80% process-oriented thinking. So for those who are very trendy out there, who say, oh, they want to learn computational coding and or engineering, like, you know, software engineering or video game design, whatnot, process-oriented thinking. It's a inherent part that is so far biased towards process-oriented thinking. It can be repackaged like that too. Like, I don't actually code video games or do data science anymore or look at cybersecurity in like a direct oriented way, and I don't even do science anymore, like biology and whatnot, but those foundations are repackaged all the time with different anecdotes. When someone says, oh yeah, hey, you know what's a great asset and practice to do? Reinvent the wheel sometimes. You're probably going to hear that from many successful people who already engage in creative process and process-oriented evaluation. Learning a language is 80% towards process-oriented thinking versus the whole goal-oriented thing. Like, even in my opinion, super hot take, even thinking that the goal is to be a native speaker it will cause, in my opinion, someone to completely focus on the goal as opposed to what's actually happening and how you get there. Like, the very moment that you're saying, oh, I see. So I will revolve all of my processes to be as close to a native speaker and then go backwards from a native speaker. So if I can literally speak to a native speaker, then that is the closest thing to my goal. But you are like 3 countries over, and you're trying to pretend like you're already at your goal and work backwards. I don't necessarily think that works for everyone. In fact, I would say it works for fewer people in a learning process than not, because what you're relying on is that your intuition takes over and you're just doing it. You want it to be intuitive, and that's fair enough. So I'm not one of those people, but yeah, baby steps. What does this look like when I started language learning, like with Duolingo? It looked nothing like this. Just go check out the day 25, around day 25 Duolingo, my first Duolingo with Duolingo Japanese. It was underdeveloped. I didn't know what I was talking about, and most of the time I was like, oh, I'm gonna fill this out, I'm gonna fill that out, I guess I kind of like this part. And now I'm like, no, this is what Japanese is to me right now. What you see on the screen, that's what I do every split second. Every time I'm just looking at a character, this is very close to what's going on in my head. Can I say any of this at day 1? Absolutely not. I didn't even know what I was even in for, and that was a year ago. It's you know, it's been a little over a year now, and this is where I am now. That's where I am. That was where I am then. Do I sound like I'm a native Japanese speaker? No, obviously not. I didn't even work towards that yet. But do I know a lot about Japanese? Absolutely. I do know a lot about Japanese. What does it look like? Well, it looks like this for me. And most people, like a lot of people would say, well, that looks like you didn't learn any Japanese. Like, you're not even speaking Japanese. You don't even use Japanese during your stream. It's like, well, yeah, that doesn't mean I didn't learn anything about Japanese. I would even argue I can probably make Japanese more approachable than someone who already learned a lot of Japanese for their own sake without understanding why it works. So, different focus, different mindsets, different purpose. And honestly, I don't mind sounding like a gaijin for the rest of my life if I get to distribute some of that time and effort in showing and demonstrating workflow management and habit formation that you can use for not just learning Japanese. You can use it for fitness, life decisions, solving problems, emotional problems, relational communication. So that's probably the goal. Like, why do I play video games? Same reason. Well, playing video games, you know, playing Like a Dragon doesn't look like WaniKani. Yes, it does. To me. You can't see it because you're not, in my opinion, because you're not me. And also, it would take me like 16 hours to explain how, when I look at Like a Dragon, how it's basically like WaniKani. And that would be generalizing things. I do not want to generalize things. It requires vast years of leap of logic and oversimplification in order to get there. And I feel that's what products are like today. Where someone would say, I'm a polyglot, and this is my key to success. It is a reductive comment that is predicated on faith, lack of transparency, and it still works. There's no denying that it still works. But the person using it knows very little about the person who made it, what their journey is like, and it's operated on faith. So, do you have enough faith to try and then use that as a learning experience to create your own creative image of what works? Because in the end of the day, it's not that you use someone else's thing to work, it's you made the thing work for you. At least in my opinion. So kudos to those who can see through the veil, right? And ask, does this person actually know what he's talking about, or does this person not know what he's talking about? It's definitely up for you to decide, but at least I spend most of my time trying to explain things to people, as opposed to saying sweeping generalities that things will work by claiming I have a status. I don't go around saying I have a PhD, so therefore whatever I say about science is more accurate than yours. That would be full-blown negligent, in my opinion, and professionally deceptive if I said I speak 4 languages, therefore I can make a product that guarantees that you learn those 4 languages. I would say you should give it a try. This is the stuff that works for me. Let me explain why I've incorporated these things in the design. Give it a try. If it works for you, I'm very happy. But please be assured that there's no guarantee in its results. But that doesn't sell products. Guarantees hyperbolic language sells products. That's kind of a sore spot for me about how negligent profiteering is from experts who believe that they keep saying they care about language learning and they want to promote language learning, and yet hyper aggressively continue to sell products for depicting a product in a very simplified form instead of going above and beyond to explain things, at least in my opinion. All right, thank you. This is the end of WaniKani in Japanese today. You're gonna watch this later. Arigatou gozaimasu. Right. So for those who are only interested in Japanese, minasan mata ne. I'm gonna get up, take a quick bathroom break, and I'll be back for Hanzuhiro. Thank you.